Well, hi, my name is Eric Dewar. I'm an associate professor of biology at Suffolk University in Boston, and I'm here today talking with some of my students in my course called Humans and the Evolutionary Perspective, which is a course about evolution for people who aren't science majors. And I'm here with a couple of students from the honors program at Suffolk University, and we're going to talk about some of the ideas from this book called Behave, The Biology of Humans at Our Best and Worst by Robert Sapolsky. Not expressly about all the ideas that are in the book, but a couple things that we thought was interesting. So first, let's introduce the people.
I'm Sophia and I'm a sophomore, and I'm a psychology and criminal justice major.
I'm Adriana. I'm also a psychology major.
Right. I think what got my attention about this book being relevant for us is we spent a lot of time thinking about, like, why are you this way? And what we wanted to focus on for this first part was to be thinking about the way that human nature, like, what do we know about the brain, and how should that inform the way that we think about, what its place in the criminal justice system, in thinking about bigger questions about altruism and free will and that kind of thing. So what are the pluses and minuses for having neuroscience go into the criminal justice system?
Well, there are definitely, in my personal opinion, the criminal justice system is it's more about punishment than it is about rehabilitation, and that's not, through neuroscience, we've proven that that's not necessarily helping our system reduce recidivism. And I think as we we learn more things about neuroscience and the brain and the biology and how it influences criminal behavior, we can work to change our system in a way that works for human brains to reduce recidivism, which is important.
What are some things that are important about trying to reduce recidivism? Like, what are some best practices we know about that we use today?
Not much. Our system is more built around taking the criminals out of society and then throwing them in jail and then saying, okay, you served your time, bye. Maybe go to parole or probation or whatever, but it's less about why did you do this? Let's fix why you did this so you won't do it again, and more about just don't do it again.
Mm-hmm. What about programs like people who will be teaching whether it's basic math skills or kind of some career training in jails? I mean, I have a couple of friends who volunteer in the Massachusetts criminal system, in the MCI system. Are those kinds of interventions typical across the country, or are they like unusual?
I know they're offered in a lot of jails, especially juvenile systems. They focus, like, you have to be in school. It's illegal. You're illegal to not be in school as a juvenile. So a lot of it is in the juvenile system. There's teachers and GED programs, and sometimes college classes are offered, but I'm not sure if it's a whole degree that you can get there.
Yeah.
But it is offered, I know, nationwide, but I'm not sure how. It's not like it's enforced in a lot of places.
Yeah. What else do you think about programs that can be happening in prisons, or things that are going to help to not change people's minds, but help to get them in a mindset that's going to be more helpful for being pro-social rather than kind of antisocial behaviors?
So I actually did a research project on this, and a lot of the information I found is that these programs are actually effective, and people who are released from jail and have these opportunities to, let's say, work on finding employment instead of having or being scared thinking, well, no one's going to want me as an employee because I just came out of jail. So I think it also has to do a lot with society and understanding that, yes, this person has served time, but they did do their time and they are now free, and they should be able to come back into society and actually be involved instead of not involved.
So what are some things that people, whether it's employers or, I don't know, or people in the private sector, what are things that they can be doing that are going to help to, work with people coming out of prisons then, do you think?
Definitely, one, be understanding and unbiased, not thinking, oh, well, this person's going to do something again, or we can't have this person around our business because it doesn't look good. Or I think in a way, like a disability, you can't really deny someone because they're disabled. Same way, if they come out of jail, you can't say, well, we can't employ you.
Okay. So then now kind of zooming back in on the brain in particular then, what are there places where you think, because in neuroscience, the way it's described in the book, the way that we think about it as psychologists, you guys are psychologists, I'm not, is that, this is about processes that happen in the brain, connections that are made in the brain, connections that are enforced due to feedback. What are some things that should we take that into account when it comes time for trial or for sentencing? Or are we only thinking about this on the back end once somebody's already been through the system? So is there a place in the courtroom for neuroscience?
I definitely think there needs to be. The book talks about the insanity defense and stuff like that, but what a lot of people don't realize about the insanity defense is once it's decided that they're not responsible by reason of insanity, they're going to most likely serve more time in a mental institution than they would if they went to jail. So they're actually serving more time. So it's not like they're not responsible, they're not being punished for the crime because they are. It's just in a different place. It's not in jail, it's in a mental institution. But we definitely need to start, now that we are learning things and understanding things about the brain and how it contributes to criminal behavior and the neuroscience behind it, if we can figure out a way to make it understandable to juries where it's not just a picture of someone's brain in a brain scan and say, ooh, look at the pretty colors, it's not going to really do much for the jury or the defendant or the prosecution or anything. But if we can make it understandable to the jury in a way that they can actually understand what's going on and the science behind it, while still not making it too complicated for them to understand.
No, I hear that. I think whenever some of these arguments, it seems to me as an observer of the legal system, is that these are things that we think about when we're doing patent law, thinking about if we're looking at infringement of copyright, where you have to give kind of technical sort of inside baseball descriptions of what's happening. Or when I think of the trials that the evolution people did going through all the court cases about intelligent design and creationism in schools, we have to be able to make the science understandable to a jury of one's peers, right? So that's we're going to assume that's going to happen. They have to be able to be good at that. But what do you think would be information that would be helpful to give to a jury? If you could have somebody in an fMRI where they're looking at different parts of the brain working, what kinds of information do you think a jury, assuming you could explain it, information you would want a jury to see that would say, okay, they're going to be culpable for this or not culpable for this? Do we say, look, there's a person whose amygdala is highly sensitive to antisocial stimuli, or this is somebody who's, we see parts of their brain that are less developed due to what their upbringing was like, or socioeconomic status or something, or do we just skip it altogether and say, we know the brain's affected poorly as a result of low socioeconomic status, and so we should keep that in mind? So is it an analog argument, or is it one where we're actually trying to bring scientific information in for the jury? Which do you think is going to be more effective?
I think in practice, if you're going to go and say, we know the brain is affected by this, the prosecution is going to jump on that and say, well, do we? How does this actually happen? And you are going to need to bring science into it so that it's not like a joke of an argument that you're bringing in.
Right. Well, the question is, scientists need to bring the heat, because if scientists don't, then if scientists don't bring in expertise to inform these conversations, other people will fill the gap. And these people who might have agendas, ones that might be non-scientific. Not that I think science is the answer to everything, but is this founded in something rational, or is it founded in something that appeals to the emotions? I think that's the, that's what I want to see. I don't know if I sort of get nervous when we leave talk about how the brain works to people who don't study the brain. It's not that they can't understand, But if they're going to come at it with a different level of sophistication than you would want for somebody who you're defending, like somebody for their life, say.
I feel like if we were to bring neuroscience like into like a jury, I think there has to be some form of education, because I don't think someone just telling them like this is what this means is enough for them. Like I think they themselves would have to have some type of understanding. Like, oh, okay, so this is actually happening. Like I see it and I know this, so it's true. Instead of just having someone say, well, this is happening, like look, and you're just showing me something, but I don't understand what you're showing me.
Mm-hmm. Seems like it's going to have a whole new, if we're expecting scientific expertise, which we're not, of juries, or like even just lawyers are going to have the same problems that like teachers and professors do, which is how do you bring somebody in when they are kind of dragging their feet, so I think that those sort of things you're going to have the same problems we have. Let's broaden out a little bit, thinking about things that the brain does and that we need to be thinking about if we're looking at responsibility for crime. Do we have free will or not? Free will or not, yes or no?
Yes.
All right, what do you think?
No.
Oh, great, good. Now fight.
I just think, not that it's complete free will. Biology has no space in our decisions. I think most of our decisions are biology, but I can't imagine that our brains have evolved. Not that it's not evolved, but we haven't evolved so that way biology affects everything. Like there's no way that if I'm in a store and I see like socks or something that have flowers on them and I'm like, oh, I like those socks, they have flowers. How is that increasing my fitness? Mm-hmm. How is that, like, did we really adapt something that's that specific in biology? So there has to be, I think, some free will, just because like not everything is going to increase fitness and the socks aren't going to matter. So it's like, did we really, like, there's a little. I think there's a little.
I don't know. I think from the point that we are born, we are in this society that shapes us from the very beginning, whether it be our parents who bring us up or when we're in school, like preschool. I feel like you have these set of rules that you must follow. And it's like, in a way, everyone, well, not everyone, but most people go through the same path. So I don't really consider that free will, because it's kind of like a schedule. Like you're born, you're taken care of, eventually you go to school, you continue with school, you grow up, you get a job, and it's like a cycle. So I don't really consider that free will, if that's what we're talking about.
Yeah, I get what you're saying with that. It's like,
wow, it's like you're just like a cog in the machine in this thing. It's like
we're just sheep.
Oh man. So but I'm thinking about the socks argument. So you have, like, if you don't have free will, does that mean you don't have any agency whatsoever? Like you can't make your own choices?
Not necessarily.
Because that's the argument, right? If there's no free will, that means everything's foreordained, right?
I mean, in a way, those socks are there, but they were made and they were placed there for you to buy.
For Sophia.
Yeah. I think, like, I can see when you said, like, we're born in a society and it shapes us, I probably like flowers because something in the society made me like flowers.
Gender role.
Yeah, there you go. But I think as I was reading the part about free will, I was thinking of it in a way as, like, free will as we, in everyday decisions, in everything kind of. And he had the three arguments. There's no free will, there's some, and it's like everything is free will. And I just thought about it as like a biological, like, biology affects like this, all these things that we do, our behaviors, the brain chemistry, everything like that. But then I can't bring myself to think that biology controls every single thing that we do ever. Like, it does a lot. I'm not saying it doesn't. Like, we have very little free will, but I just can't imagine that we have...
None at all.
Not none at all. it's just like, does biology really need to play into every single thing? And it might. I don't know, the socks thing, like.
Well, I think a lot of the argument that's made in the book starts with, there's some, like, back in the old days, the argument used to be like nature versus nurture, right? Is it all about genes or is it all due to the environment? And it's sort of a cop-out, but I mean, of course there's going to be, these two dials are going to get moved up kind of separately. So it seems like, we have certain genetic predispositions, but those predispositions are going to be amplified or decreased depending on like what's happening hormonally, what's happening the way that you've been primed, like due to a lot of like physiological factors. So, but yeah, the basic question of like, do we have free will, like full stop, is as I think he says in the book, like every discussion of free will is contractually obligated to start with the Libet experiment of people reporting when they decided to push a button. But I like that as a kind of a mechanical idea. Like, but if it looks like our prefrontal cortex is where the actual decisions are happening, but our voluntary actions happen in this conscious part of the brain as opposed to this unconscious, subconscious prefrontal cortex, it's still the same brain. So if like, does your mind have to be aware of it in order for it to be free will? Like, it seems like it seems to me like it fractionates the brain out into, an other, like I don't think the prefrontal cortex any more than your cerebellum like doesn't belong to you just because we don't have conscious awareness of it. So I don't know. I just find myself thinking about, how we make decisions, and if there's how much this has, because we say there's no free will, that also smacks to me like everything is foreordained. So all of us are just automata, all of us are like subatomic particles that have to take certain routes or something. And that's a little off course for me. Basically, my problem with no free will is that when you blow it out to all of its logical, what I think are all of its logical conclusions, it means the universe, there's really no place for randomness in the universe, really no chance for chance. But I do like his argument. There's also, we can certainly opt out of certain behavior. So if we don't have free will, like he says, somebody wrote, it seems like we have like free won't. We can opt out of things, but we not like we have to take every agency for every action. We can choose not to do things. So maybe that's what free will actually looks like. But this is not something we're going to land the plane on today. But I guess one last thing, thinking about decisions that we make, one of the things that he's written in the book, he says, he asks the question, is there ever a selfless act that contains no element of self-interest? So even when humans are doing good things, even when we're doing things that we aren't going to directly see any benefit for, it's not going to increase our fitness. Why do we do? Is it still selfish, or is there a place? Like, how do we explain altruism?
I don't think it's selfish. I think it's a form of like satisfaction. Like, I can help you, and that's not necessarily helping me, but it does make me feel good to know that I helped you in a way.
So like that moral imperative argument that I feel better when I do it, so for that reason, it's the right thing to do. Okay.
I agree with that. And I don't think it makes that little bit of satisfaction that you get, it doesn't make it less of a good thing that you're doing. You're still, the person you're helping is still getting the same amount of help whether or not you're satisfied with it or not. And I think it's that little bit of satisfaction is a good way to get people motivated to do good things.
How does this fit into you as a social person? I have a set of mittens in my coat that I don't use anymore that I'm going to give to a homeless person. But I just told you that. So I'm going to get these chits for like, what a good guy. He's not just going to throw in the trash. How much of these things do you think are motivated like that way? Motivated for, all right, I'm not going to get any direct benefit from this, but what I get is these little social chits that you can cash in later.
I feel like if we're going back to the brain, it's that sense of, or that release of dopamine, which is you're doing something good and you just told us that you're going to do something good and we're going to say, wow, that's really great. And in a way that's like the dopamine release in your brain is like, you're happy, you're doing something good, and you're getting like a not necessarily a reward. I mean, I guess it is like in your brain sense, but it's making you feel good. And you want more of that.
But what if I had to, what if I altruistically decided to donate an organ? Like an organ that I only have one of. If it's an altruistic choice that results in, that results in the end of your life, then how do we rationalize that kind of altruism? We think of, men and women who fight in combat, who make decisions that are going to help to move their group forward, but are going to be a sacrifice for themselves. How do we rationalize that? Is that evolutionarily beneficial? We're not talking about, like, if you think about in combat, these are not people who you're related to. They're people who you're tightly bonded with because of, from, being, kind of unit cohesion, being together through, but do we think about that? It's not like we can say, oh, you have grandchildren that are, have more grandchildren as a result of this child surviving or something. But if you're actually if the people who you're not related to, then where's the benefit go?
Definitely not to your offspring.
So then there's no fitness advantage, right?
Exactly. So then you have to think about it. I mean, I think, no, you're not increasing your evolutionary fitness, but we've also, as we've evolved and we've developed all these emotions and all this stuff, maybe you didn't want to have offspring in the first place. Not that it's evolutionary beneficial, but it could have just been like a personal decision.
I don't want to have kids anyway, so I'm going to do this. I'm going to do this.
Not necessarily.
Okay.
I'm not going to die because I don't have kids. But if it was something that serving your country or however you looked at it was more important than immediately having kids right at that moment. It was more important to you. You going off and possibly losing your life, that it was just more important to you. Not you didn't go out there to die.
No.
But you serving your country and doing whatever you wanted to do in that's just what you wanted to do. And for some reason, you're out there and there's serving some purpose for you. It's probably dopamine release.
Yeah, I get you. Yeah, technically, yeah. Dopamine and serotonin, technically the only two things you like. But, what you say actually brings me to a bigger point about people, which is that we're like the only species that will do things against our self-interest, do things against like our, what would be our fitness advantage voluntarily, like for ideas. And that's something that's one way we don't see a lot of other animals. A lot of other animals decide to do altruistic acts because it's going to have some kind of fitness benefit for the survivors. But yeah, that's one of the things that makes humans great and horrible, is that we will make these decisions in the face of fitness changes. That's all. I think that gives us a degree of agency that I think it seems qualitatively at least different than what we see in other animals. We could talk about this all day, but we can't. So anyway, well, this is fun. So thanks for anybody who's watched this, and good job. Say goodbye.
Bye. Thank
Bye.
you.
Thank you.